10 cents on their real estate, that would require a public hearing, advertised that that was going to happen. The problem with that is we'll start running into a time frame of Mrs. Carter being able to get that work done to get it out for the June bill. So this is more an update. If you want us to proceed with putting it on their water bill, we can do that at any time, because you can start that July 1 if you want. We have a public hearing, start that July 1. If you want it to be a tax assessment, we need to decide that's what we're thinking about doing, and we'll advertise those next year when we advertise tax rates for next year.
So what was the recommended, if there was a recommended addition to a water bill if we went down that road?
It's really could be anything, but what we were looking at is once we get to the 61st month, they would see a slight reduction in their overall bill that they're paying, and we would have our strongest financial gain to make at that point, because that money will be going strictly to upgrade the lines in there.
He said tonight $4. He said earlier tonight.
If we did anything now, $4.
I was just throwing $4 at. If you wanted to charge $4, we could start putting a little bit of money in there, and you would have something. It could be any amount that you wanted, really, to help offset the cost of, Caroline Pines.
But $4 was sort of the number kicked out tonight as a recommendation.
That was just a number that I pulled out of there. There was no real recommendation. We were coming forth to kind of discuss service district compared to being able to charge a base fee underneath of 93-1 under utility rates. Because that's been a question we've had, and we finally gotten that nailed down through the county attorney that can be done.
But to collect any significant dollars, you would really need to be in that $40, $35, $40 range, which would be difficult to put on people when they're already paying $46 more than the normal water customer is currently.
So then that would go to Mr. Akers' idea of extending the fee that they're paying now out 2 or 3 more years and putting some of that money aside for the purpose now, correct?
Yeah, the only change with that is it changes the budget in that currently that $46 they're paying, we're budgeting to go to debt service. So if I'm not going to put that to debt service, I've got to have that same amount of money you're putting in that fund pay debt service. So it has a budget impact in this budget year. If you want us to look at that for next year, we certainly can run those numbers and put that in a separate fund. Given the fact that we're experiencing very low breaks in there and are handling it, it's not a bad thing to look at. We're going to have issues down there, but I think we have the insurance policy. If we have a catastrophic failure, we'll just have to borrow the money and charge them an assessment. Hold a public hearing and say, here's what we borrowed, here's what you owe, and everybody gets a tax increase to fix their water line. But they'll see the work going on. It's a lot tougher to do that when we're just sort of piling it up in the bank and not really fixing their water line. That would be my recommendation. We kind of come to a consensus over the next several months of what we want to do next year. And so if we want to look at putting it on the water rate, raising their base rate at the end of the 5 years of their paying the 46, and take some of that money and start sticking it aside next year, we can show you what that does to our debt service. But in that we're paying debt service with general fund dollars, it's not really, it's sort of a, I don't know what they call it.
It's a no-win situation.
It's a shell game. You're sort of not, I'm going to have money to pay the debt service. That's what we're doing with that $46 today. When we finish with that 46 in 5 years and they've paid their $2,800, that's always been staff's recommendation. That's when we put the assessment on. They won't really notice an increase, but we'll collect significant dollars then to be able to plan to upgrade their lines.
Mr. Taylor?
Right. And that's my whole point. I know that the problem in there has to be dealt with, and I think that the board understands that we're going to have to deal with it. My concern was right now, given the situation right now with a possibility or strong possibility of 11-cent tax increase, and we've already up to $1 fee charged to them. I just would not like to see them get an additional charge at this time.
All right, so again, I'd like to talk to Mr. Thomas about setting up a water plan meeting and look at this during the budget season next year so that there's some sort of run up to it. It's a topic that we haven't talked about. It's been on the table. I think we've had a vigorous discussion. Mr. Underwood's at least still smiling. Always. Thank you, sir. If there's no other discussion, we'll leave this as just action for the upcoming budget next year, if that's okay. Mr. Black?
I will say this, I think that Caroline Pines is probably kind of starting the process with other subdivisions that may be popping up down the road or whatever, and I think that's something we're going to have to look at to do something uniformly with all subdivisions as well. I mean, what we charge them, and how we go about approaching Caroline Pines.
Okay. I don't disagree.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to agenda item number 9. Who's going to do 9, Mr. Caldwell? Is that you?
As you see in your packet, each year the board establishes tax rates for the calendar year that we're in, 14, along with setting the Personal Property Tax Relief Act rate for the calendar year. That's based on a recommendation from Commissioner of Revenue based on the number of vehicles. You know, we get a finite amount of money from the state that was set for us, and so as you gain more cars, then the percentage of the refund everybody, or the not really refund, but the reduced rate goes down. And so we have that in
We're at the 58% point
I was
right
looking
now.
for 58% for calendar 14, so that would be
For anything under 20,000
and 20,000 is the break.
is the break point.
Right. You don't get any personal property tax relief on cars that cost the value above 20,000. And then we would recommend the 11-cent tax rate increase on real estate, no increase to personal property. Mobile homes would be 11 cents, machinery and tools 11 cents, public service corporations 11 cents, and personal property public services stay the same.
We're going to see how this plays out. You know, we all went to the, just to cover the 11-cent tax increase, we all agreed to go to bond referendum for the schools, and I believe the vote for the radio system was unanimous, which we said was at the time, and I will say that I was probably the most vocal, and I don't see any of the folks here that wanted the radio system except maybe the chief, who's here. I'll take that back. Major Mosier was here for that, and actually spoke for it, but I told everybody then that it was going to be 3 cents if we did that. And we didn't look at any of the options. So with the bond referendum passing with 81% of the vote, and it was unanimous on the communication system, and everybody pretty much agreed that it was 8 cents for schools and 3 cents for the radio system, and we didn't see at that point in time with the mandate any way around it. As much as none of us liked tax increases, including me, I think we were all resolved at that point, and we were relieved that we went from 12 to 11. So, Mr. Taylor, do you have any comments you'd like to make on the tax rate? Personal property staying the same. It's real estate and machine tool taxes staying the same. It is just the real estate.
The only comment I would have to make, Mr. Vice Chair, is that it's a difficult situation to be in, and I personally regret having to put the citizens of this county in that position, but it can't be helped. We have school facilities that need to be dealt with, and we have to do it. The radio system, as has been said, was a mandate, so it is what it is. I support it, not because I want to, but because I have no choice. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Black?
Yeah, I only have one thing, and I think we're kind of probably one of the easiest budget cycles that I've been through so far since I've been on the board. And it's, as Mr. Taylor pointed out, and as you pointed out, we have mandated expenses that we've got to take care of. We can't, I guess it would be unfair of us to, keep the taxes really low and then, have these referendum in place, kick the can down the road. So as far as the only thing in the budget that is being increased is the schools. They are getting, $360,000 more. Everything else in the county has been flat funded. So the schools are getting $360,000 more from us, and from the state? About $700,000 from the state. Am I happy with that? No, I'm not. I ran trying to help the schools. And I really think the number one priority in a budget, and people can argue public safety, people can argue schools, is the schools. The last time that we met, we had several people from the school system here talking about, to fully fund the school budget, which was, they wanted an additional $2.8 million from us. That's just not realistic when we're putting down an 11-cent tax increase to pay for the Caroline High School improvement, the Madison Elementary, as well as the radio system, which a lot of the radio system is going towards the schools. It is going towards buses. But what struck me most of all the speakers that spoke was Pastor Tillepaugh, actually, when he spoke to us. I think there needs to be a continued dialogue with the school system. Are we where we want to be with Caroline County schools? No, we're not. Is it going to happen overnight? No, it's not. We're not going to get to where we need to be with Caroline County schools. Probably have they been underfunded for a very long time? Absolutely. So I think that we need to sit down with them and can have continued dialogue with them and how we can better serve them. One of the discussions that we had with Dr. Kilo, obviously was maybe a joint, the joint bus garage, us getting in on that as well to save the county money. Maybe savings from that could go towards the schools. We need to look at a lot of different things. So it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over time. So I just kind of want to let that out there from my own perspective, that I think that is the number one budget priority. I think this budget is showing that. I think the budget that we're doing is improving Caroline High School, improving Madison Elementary, and giving the schools, the only department that's getting more money is the schools. So with that, I guess that's it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Looking at the budget cycle, I kind of agree with my two colleagues. It's 11-cent tax increases, definitely not what we would like to do. But as noted earlier, the citizens of the county voted unanimously, 80-something%, to fund the school in terms of their capital improvement needs. And those needs are there. But I would go one step further than Mr. Black. I think all of our county employees deserve more. When you look at the treasurer's office, and you look at Mr. Cully's office, and you look at public utilities, and you look at our fire and safety, it's not just one entity that needs more. And it's going to take, I think, we're making progress. I commend Mr. Wilson on going out and continuing to talk to businesses to move the county forward. But if you look at the last 4 years, not only the county, but the country itself, not only the state, we've been in dire straits. And this is a tough tax increase when the cost of gas goes up, the cost of food goes up, the cost of sending students to college goes up. I mean, it is a very, very tough situation, but this tax increase is almost mandated by the citizens of this county. And I wish we could give every department an increase, but there's just not enough money in the budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, we've said, a lot tonight about we need to do more, we need to do more. And I'll agree, we do. But I don't want us to lose sight of the fact as to where we have come from as to where we are now. Fire and rescue, I can remember, of course, I've been around for a while, but when I first came on this board, the county paid fire and rescue $50,000. That was it. That's all we invested into the fire and rescue, was $50,000. Today we invest over $4 million into fire and rescue. And that's just one area. So yes, we need to do more. We need to keep striving to do more. But again, let's not lose sight of the fact that we haven't just done nothing. We have come a long way over the last years. 11-cent tax increase is the largest tax increase I can remember in 27 years, and probably a lot of board members before me. It's not been that much of an increase. But as Mr. Taylor has said, It is what it is. We have to do it. The people, I think, indicated they were willing to go that route and to pay that amount, so I don't know that we have any choice but to raise the tax rate by 11 cents. Do I like it? No, but it's a fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. Thank you, fellow board members. As at our work session, we talked about this, and Mr. Akers, I think, verified it again tonight. It is probably the largest single tax increase the county's ever seen. But again, with the citizens have committed to facilities improvements at the schools and what been committed to the radio system, I don't see that we have a choice. We've actually agreed to do those things. And since we have, I'd like to have a motion to set, Mr. Cully, certainly.
Mr. Thomas asked that these things be put at your place tonight. I don't know if you've taken a look at these. He developed them for his constituent meeting. And on the back of the first page, we developed a chart for him that we had changed. This was originally in the 5-year plan, but this table on the right is actually a chart of the median house value from 2004 all the way to 14, the tax rate, and the amount of tax. And you can see, while it's been varied over time, even with the proposed 83 cents, it's not terribly much different than 2010 was, or where we were, based on where house prices were and the rate was back in those days. So while penny-wise it's a large increase, it's not that people haven't paid somewhere near that on the median house. So it is kind of good to know that we're sort of just floating around in an area where we've normally been based on the value.
Can we give these so that the paper can, do you have copies for that, Pam?
Yes.
It's the last page. I see them looking and trying to write down numbers, and rather than kill them trying to figure out what we're talking about. And we're on the last page. I'm sorry.
Second page.
Second page, the back of the front page is what we're looking at. Yes.
I thought that was a good chart that he asked us to put together.
I wish we could have put it up so everybody could see it, but essentially in 2010, with the tax rate at 53 cents, the mean household tax was $1,136. In 2014, with an 83-cent tax rate for a median priced house goes to $1,191, which is roughly, from 2010 to now, about $60. Can we put this up on the website tomorrow so that folks can take a look? I mean, this page is particularly interesting, and I think it would serve us all well. And thank you for that. I did not.
Well, I knew we hadn't really talked about why that was out.
Right, and it was sitting here, and I wasn't sure if it was something we were supposed to use. Based on that, fellow board members, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the tax rate be levied as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So we're establishing a tax rate for the Personal Property Tax Relief Act, as well as the tax rate for real estate and personal property. Is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
As presented in the agenda item. Thank you. 11 cents.
Since everyone's hopping up, I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Black. I have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Taylor, second by Mr. Black. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, fellow board members. I know this wasn't easy to pass unanimously. I know that none of us in this process were happy with this tax rate. I've put it out at my constituent meetings with all the folks that I've talked to. And the facts are what everybody said tonight. 11 cents is just, when you look at the bond referendum and the communication system, that's just where we are. Next on the agenda is to adopt the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget. You have the synopsis in our packet. We've all got a copy of the full budget. I will say that keeping the budget flat and only having, it is probably the easiest budget I've done in the 6 years that I've been on the board. It didn't leave a lot for discussion, that's for sure. There wasn't any place to really go. Ms. Hatcher, I see you walking up. I will let you do the presentation.
No, I'm not doing a presentation. It is what it is, gentlemen. With your motion that you did earlier this evening, you are going to have 4 numbers that will change on this resolution. For the 30,000?
Ah, of course.
So under your general fund revenues for transfers, the number will change to 389,581. Your total projected revenues will change to $44,937,069. On page 2, halfway down the page, under your social services contributions outside agencies, you'll change to $296,281, which of course will change your general fund expenditures to the $44,937,069.
281 to 781, we just did a 30,000.
30,000, it was 266, and she said it's going to go to 296.
That's correct.
296, 781, right?
Right.
2967.
I thought you said 281.
We'll send you a revised one. But we're just adding in that $30,000.
I thought you said 281.
No, I might have, but I meant,
No problem, I just want to
I'm
make
just
sure.
adding the 30 in those 4 places.
And basically, if you adopt this resolution with the caveat of the $30,000 to go to McShin, we'll make sure the paperwork follows a corrected version. We know where it goes.
Okay, so,
Mr. Taylor, any comment? Mr. Black?
None at this time.
Mr. Underwood, any?
No, sir.
Mr.
No, sir.
Akers?
No, sir.
I will entertain a motion to adopt the budget as amended this evening.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. Unanimous. Agenda item number 10 is done. Number 11 is the request for expedited public hearing on special exception 04-2014, Madison Elementary School, modification for front setback. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, next item is a request for an expedited public hearing for special exception from Madison Elementary School to allow a modification to the front setback. Current zoning the subject property is zoned rural preservation, so the current front setback requirements in RP are 150 feet. The structure is already non-conforming with respect to that front setback, in that the setback is currently 131 feet from the public road. The proposed modifications to Madison Elementary School would reduce that setback even further to 114 feet from the right-of-way. By ordinance, reductions in setbacks or height limitations for public facilities are subject to a special exception permit from the Board of Supervisors. Because of the time frame related to the beginning of construction for this project, they are requesting the expedited public hearing to allow them, hopefully, to start construction early this summer. For Madison, this will be we have 3 different issues that will be going on concurrently. First, we will have the proposed vacation of the right-of-way for the bus loop off of Chance Place. The second issue would be the public hearing for the special exception permit. And The third issue that will be going on concurrently will be the site plan and building construction plan review and approval, so that they will actually have all of the plans approved concurrently to allow them to go forward with construction.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Board members with questions? I will entertain a motion, and we can move on.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we have an expedited hearing, special exception 04-2014, Madison Elementary School, modification of front setback.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Agenda item number 12. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, your next item is also a request for an expedited public hearing related to security fencing for Dominion Virginia Power. I believe their request is self-explanatory. We have a text amendment that would go through the process to allow their request. We've met with them, understand the issue, and are fully supportive of that request.
Motion order.
Take a motion anytime. I don't believe there's been any questions. I've talked to most of the board members about this. A motion would be completely in order.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Black, second by Mr. Taylor. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Capital projects report.
Just an update to our monthly capital projects report. As you can see, we still haven't spent a tremendous amount on the radio system. We did just approve a bill for $300,000, so that will reflect that in next month's report. Happy to report the YMCA is open, operating. They opened Sunday and are running. We have a few punch list items to get correct there, but that's complete. We've started tracking Madison Elementary and Caroline High on here, so you can see the money that's been spent so far for those projects. Pretty much the rest of everything else is complete on these projects, including Dawn Phase 2.
Questions from board members on capital projects? Do I have a motion for closed session? Well, I just want to make sure.
And it's on the calendar, but it came up the last time. I will be out of town next week for the 50th anniversary of the Mustang.
Closing board comments, Mr. Taylor.
I don't have any, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Black?
One of the things I'd just like to say, first of all, I'm going to set it up with Mr. Culley, but probably in the second, maybe third week of May, I'll be looking to have some constituent meetings in the Western Carolina District, so probably be after our next board meeting, and I'll talk to you, Mr. Culley, about that, the advertisement and so forth. Second thing I want to say is, and a lot of people, I guess there's not a lot of people here, but the people that are do see this, one of the things as a board member that I would just like to say, and I don't think we say enough, sometimes as supervisors we call to, down to the administration office and we ask for, can you get me this, can you get me that? And I don't think that Mr. Culley and his staff are truly, at least from my perspective, appreciated as much as, well, we really do need to appreciate them because they do a heck of a job for us. Mr. Parton, anyone on the staff that I ask for information, it is right there and readily available almost instantaneously. So I would like to thank them.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Underwood?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Akers.
I have scheduled in Lake Caroline a constituent meeting for May the 12th, 7 o'clock. And Ms. Hall, if you would tomorrow call Michelle and confirm, I've spoken to her about it. I went over to pay my dues, and I saw her in the office, so I talked to her about it. And then advertise it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. I have none. I will take a motion, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Akers, for closed session for legal counsel, I believe.
I move that this board convene and close meeting pursuant to the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff, exemption of section 2.2-3711.A.7 of the Code of Virginia regarding specific legal matters requiring legal advice regarding the collection of amounts due to the county related to the sale of water to Lady Smith Water Company.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor by aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We are now convened in closed session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
No move.
We did.
Yeah, we just.
I mean, but there's no business to come out of closed session. Okay. Certification of closed session, only discussing what we're in closed session for. Mr. Taylor?
I so certify.
Mr. Black?
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Akers?
I so certify.
And I so certify. Nothing's coming out of closed session. No action at all. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.